In late 2019, eCampus Ontario commissioned an environmental scan of international micro-certification business models in order to help us shape a shared approach to the alternative recognition of learning. Don Prezant was awarded this contract, and today's webinar will feature his findings from this report. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Don Prezant. Don is a leading expert on open badges and micro-credentials in Canada. He's a longtime consultant for eCampus Ontario, as well as Polytechnics Canada and Algonquin College. Don is also the president of Learning Agents in cancred.ca, which is a digital credentialing platform based on open badges.
Thank you very much, Emma. I'm very pleased, very excited to be here today to have the chance to show you the results of the work that we've been doing on this. Emma's spoken about what eCampus Ontario has been doing in its leading way to build recognition ecosystems. There was some work early on with the sandbox. eCampus Ontario runs its own passport, which is a recognition hub. It's led the way in terms of self-directed learning with Ontario Extend. There have been now 3 forums that have run. First, the Open Badge forums, and then the Micro Certification Forum in 2020. We have the pilot projects that are just winding up in 2020. And then the Micro Certification Principles and Framework, which I think is actually a wonderful addition to the ecosystem in general. And now this report for Micro Certification Business Models. So eCampus Ontario has been very busy in this regard. The way it was presented to us at Learning Agents was there are a number of sort of perceived barriers to adopting micro-certifications. And here are just some that were given somewhat informally when we were framing this project. And they seem to be causing a lot of friction for people. And yet, there's a growing practice beyond the borders of Ontario and Canada. So what could be done to get rid of that friction? What could be done to oil the gears? So hence the report. So the report, the intent of the report is to learn from the practices of others outside Ontario and Canada. A snapshot of international practices in micro-credentials, micro-certifications, in, I'm saying FE, that's a more international term, that would be more like community colleges and vocational training, but also higher education, so further education, higher education. Intended to be representative rather than exhaustive. This is not a statistical survey, it's more paradigms, a set of paradigms, you might say. And it's intended to help Ontario institutions get started by answering some nagging questions, getting some insights from the early pioneers, helping institutions actually see themselves in the actions of other institutions, saying, oh, they're not so different from us, maybe we can do something similar. And the idea to indicate also beyond the notion of badging at your institution is to think of yourself as part of a larger ecosystem and directions for that. So the intent in general, it's my fond hope that this report is a set of tools that you can use to recognize practice, to orient yourself in practice, and then start thinking like a menu for designing and developing your own micro-certification strategies. So what we're going to do is not a walkthrough, but a jog through of the document, maybe a power walk. So running from left to right, you might have a department, say continuing education, that starts experimenting with badges. You might have an institution-wide thing happening, or you might have a consortium of like-minded institutions agreeing that they were going to work together around micro-certification. You might have something where it might be an NGO, perhaps a government-funded NGO that's saying, this is the way that we're going ahead. So that would be the idea of centralized leadership, and then some industry-led, and that might get into things, well, I'll be talking about the IBM example and alluding to a couple of other examples where large corporations are leading the way. So some examples here of those. So I mentioned continuing education. Deacon is an example that's in the long version. RMIT we feature in this report. The Otago Polytechnic is also featured there. OERU in the longer version, but we do talk about BOAT. Baju Veritas as an example of territoire apprenant and our learning regions. And then the NGO-led, that would be SurfNet in the Netherlands, and I've mentioned IBM. So what we tried to do for people is to just show at a glance, and this is not, I wouldn't say it's scientific, I would say it has been validated by the people we interviewed, but the idea here is what are the pros and cons, affordances, and risks you might run by taking the different models. And I'm not going to read all of this for you, but it's just intended, again, to just orient you and sort of see yourself. Do we want to just experiment as this little thing that is a little more autonomous, but maybe a little less continually funded? Do we want to just join in with other people and mostly watch and then start to dip our toe? Do we want to sort of sign on with somebody like IBM or even Salesforce and just work with them that way? Hopefully this presents that for you. What this is, in a sense, is something that I presented to audiences at Open Badges forums in the past, is you can see yourself as just one entity, or you can see yourself as part of a larger picture. So this would be the department versus an institution. Here we start bringing in other elements in the ecosystem.